Well, there are many challenges, and I'm not going to enumerate them all. I just want to give you some examples that I consider especially important. First, perhaps trivially, energy efficiency. And this stuff is beginning to consume so much energy that it's becoming a real issue, but we need it. So becoming energy efficient, that's a big, big challenge out there. We're working on it, but we need much more progress. So that's one kind of challenge. Completely different challenge, not all, but perhaps most of the computations done today on those machines come from the paradigm of fluid mechanics, applied then to all sorts of things. But that means that basically you have cause and effect traveling from A to B with lots of intermediate steps. But we need to be able more and more to deal with social settings where this is no more true. So I'm on the phone, I speak with somebody in Beijing or in New York or whatever, and there's nothing in between that counts for our interaction. We don't have the software, we don't have the algorithms, we don't have the programs for this. The third is something everybody knows in the field, which is that if you increase computing power, you pay a cost in terms of communication between the different nodes, cores in the machine, keeping the balance and being able to process huge amounts of data, which means communication is the main thing, with complex algorithms, which means computation is the main thing. That's just a tension we have to live with and we have to learn more about. The last thing I want to mention is that we are really reaching the physical limits, which means we are down at the level of atoms, and then there's quantum computing. We'll see what happens there. It's a whole new world that's beginning. And we do need new concepts to orient ourselves, not to get lost in the labyrinth of the myriad of possibilities we have. We all know that in this century, humankind, these are big words, but humankind is faced with global challenges. Let's face it. To start with a small one, there is a danger of World War III, and I'm being a bit sarcastic here, but we all know it. We don't like to think about it, but it's there. We have, first of all, risks, but we also have huge opportunities. Perhaps for the first time since millennia, we can have education, access really to the jewels of global culture via these technologies. But we have to do it. We cannot do it without these technologies, but the people engaged from the technological side need to learn. They need to become literate about global problems. This is a painful, difficult process. It's also fascinating. But if we don't learn to use these technologies to master global challenges, the global challenges will take care of technologies and get rid of them. On the other hand, I really want to emphasize this in terms of poverty alleviation, in terms of more equality, economically, but even more culturally. There are huge opportunities. We may miss them. It would be silly and sad if we would miss them. So let's try. I think it's good to start with the history of democracy as we understand it today. Democratic elements have existed in many parts of the world in small societies, but nowhere has this had more influence than in Athens in ancient Greece. But this was just one city. It was a small social body. It was a subtle, rich social and cultural dynamics that created for a historically brief period a certain kind of democracy limited to men, limited to free men, but still this model has then evolved over centuries. The big step was to learn how to have somehow democratic decision-making on large territories, which included the invention of parliaments and these kind of things. But now we have reached a point where we have much bigger entities. The United States seem to be already too big for this kind of institutions to be sufficient. We have a problem with democracy in America. We have a problem with democracy in Europe. Not sure China will be able to invent the democracy of the future. But it seems that information technology may offer new possibilities to develop a collective will, to develop shared values, shared projects of very large numbers of people That's something we need, and without this, decision makers will run into huge problems of legitimacy and frankly of incompetence. They are like pilots without a good radar system. They take decisions without not only enough information, but without enough wisdom about what's happening. So ideally, we will be able to use these technologies to develop new forms of democracy, more advanced forms of democracy. On the other hand, you mentioned the risks, and the risks are huge, let's face it. And digitalization is one of the biggest steps in the evolution of our species. It's probably like the printing press, something like that. And these things can be abused. To hope that technology will take care of itself is a childish dream, which of course many people have, but it's still not going to happen. There will be a moment where we as humans need to learn to play on these instruments. If I may close with this, Bach showed to the world how to use the piano. People didn't know how to make music with the piano. We still need to learn to play with these instruments rather than becoming kind of second-rate robots taken over by dynamics that we have launched but we don't understand anymore.